Okay, great. Looks like we've got lots of thumbs up. Hopefully you're just finishing that up if you haven't already. Just a few kind of things to cover in terms of housekeeping before we begin. If you can keep your camera on, that'd be great. It's good to see faces. I understand sometimes the bandwidth in places might not always allow for that. I am also going to be showing some videos at points as well. So sometimes I know it can be a bit easier to watch those if you do turn it off, but if you can turn it back on after that, and also definitely in the breakout spaces, because it's always good to see faces there as well. Please feel free to raise your hand or kind of use the chat, and we'll also have the Q&A function enabled as well to ask any questions throughout the session. The team will be able to respond to those throughout. So yeah, don't kind of sit on anything. Feel free to add any questions in there, and we'll also have a little bit of time at the end as well. I'm going to be looking across a couple of screens, so if my eye contact moves, just be aware that's why I've got a double screen up there. I'm not ignoring you and looking at something else or out the window. And just to kind of give you a bit of an idea of this session, we're here for 3 hours, and it's going to be covering quite a lot of the kind of key information and kind of knowledge that's required and features within the CME Sea Change sessions. So should give you a good understanding before going in to kind of deliver it across within your schools and areas, and it also features across the kind of staff sessions and the pupil sessions. Obviously, lots of people here won't have actually been through the CME Sea training themselves, so we've kind of managed to sort of take this train the trainer approach by kind of blending the content and the knowledge that you'll need that will feature within the sessions, and a lot of that we're going to cover today. The part 2 in-person sessions, so when we'll be coming up to you, I'm based in Glasgow, so everything I'll be travelling will be north, apart from actually Argyll and Bute. But we will be doing a lot more practical stuff there, so you'll get to grips a lot more with what each session looks like and some of the activities in there, and we'll be kind of a lot more working kind of in small groups for those sessions, just so you get kind of the confidence with those sessions as well. We'll share a copy of the slides after today too, so don't worry if you kind of can't kind of take lots of notes, and as you're aware, we are recording this session as well. Okay, is that all okay for everyone? Yeah, grand. So we'll just move into our first off our safe space agreement, which is something that we will set at the start of all of our CME Sea Change sessions, including those that will then be delivered with staff and pupils, also kind of known as ground rules as well. We always encourage that this safe space agreement is developed with the group that you're working with and you'll be delivering with, but here we've kind of got some key points to include here. So the first one is just keep yourself safe. We are going to be talking about mental health, stigma and discrimination, and I'm aware that everyone has their own experiences, or they might know of people who might have experienced stigma and discrimination as well. So do look after yourselves, do take time out if you need to. We've also got Vicky, who will give us another wave as well, who's here as safeguarding support throughout the session too. So if you feel like you just need to have some time out, maybe chat to a member of the team, please let Jackie know, and we've got a separate breakout space for that too. And we'll also be available for any kind of chats after the session too. Also, just be mindful of kind of sharing only information that's yours to share, and also respecting everyone's different views and experiences. We've got a whole range of different experiences, also different roles here today too. So I'm sure that people will have different levels of kind of knowledge and understanding on this too, and there'll be an opportunity to kind of share some of the things that may be happening as well in schools already too. And also just keeping in mind confidentiality, so what's shared by here shouldn't be kind of shared outside of this session as well. Does that all sound okay for everyone? Can we work to that today? Yeah? Okay, great. So you've all kind of completed that pre-evaluation, which is very much in line with the kind of learning objectives for this session too. And that also really forms the structure to today's session as well. So we've got 5 key learning objectives. The first one is for you to go away having increased knowledge and awareness of mental health, stigma and discrimination. So we're going to kind of go into our definitions and kind of understanding of what mental health, stigma and discrimination actually is. And you'll see it abbreviated as MH, S and D sometimes as well. We'll also look at the impact and kind of have an increased understanding of the impact that mental health, stigma and discrimination can have for people in school, both from the perspective of young people, but then also thinking about it within a workplace as well. We'll spend a bit of time looking at the kind of evidence-based approaches to tackling mental health stigma and discrimination. So we'll give you a bit of the theory there as well, which underpins a lot of the work that we'll then go on to do with the CME Change programme in schools. And then we'll also kind of share a bit of information about kind of what actions and information and resources you can use in your school to tackle mental health, stigma and discrimination. So really helpful when it comes to that action planning stage as well. And then finally, you'll have hopefully leave with an increased understanding of the CME Change approach and the resources available to you to support you in your school. You should have all received kind of a participant information. I know some people might have just kind of joined last minute, so we will share that again too, which kind of gives a good overview of the CME Change approach, and we'll provide a bit more information about that too, and where you can also learn a little bit more as well. So that will provide the structure for today, and we will have, you'll be pleased to hear, little breaks as well throughout today's session too. So first up, just to kind of set the scene, why are we here today and why should schools be taking up CME Change? I'm going to kind of just give a bit of context through some of the kind of current statistics around mental health and experiences of young people. So we know that 1 in 10 5 to 16-year-olds have a clinically diagnosable mental illness. 1 in 7 11 to 19-year-olds report that their mental health as either poor or very poor. 50% of mental health problems are established by age 14 and 75% by age 24. Our research that we found via kind of Feels FM, which is a platform that we'll talk about a little bit later, we found that 51% of young people wouldn't tell someone if they were struggling with their mental health, and 71% of young people have reported struggling with their mental health. And finally, 61% of young people don't think teachers take them seriously when they are struggling with their mental health. So this is some of the stats that we found from our research and provides a kind of a really good context to why it's important that we are taking a whole school approach to tackling mental health, stigma and discrimination. We want to ensure that schools and the wider community around schools are providing that safe space for young people to talk about how they're feeling and especially when they're struggling as well too. And we need everyone to be involved to help tackle that mental health stigma that young people experience, and hope that you and your schools and the wider community around your schools will get involved. Reducing stigma and discrimination is foundational to any mental health improvement work and initiatives that are kind of taking place, and for them to be effective. We often say it's kind of like that first step that we need to remove the stigma in order for people to access support and services, or else people aren't going to kind of ask for help or seek the support that might be available within their schools or kind of wider community again. So if the stigma does remain, support and services won't be accessed or effective. So it's really important that we are looking and getting a better understanding of what that mental health stigma and discrimination can look like and how we can reduce it within our school environments. I'm now going to just show a little video. I'm going to have to come out of my screen to do that just because it'll start jumping, just about CME Change as well.
Oh, I don't know what to do with myself.
Okay, you ready?
See Me, See Change is the new approach to tackling mental health stigma and discrimination in schools.
While we are getting better at talking about mental health, stigma and discrimination still exist.
More than half of young people in Scotland say they wouldn't tell anyone if they were struggling with their mental health, and that needs to change.
See Me, See Change brings together staff and students to map out how they can work together to tackle the issue of mental health stigma and discrimination.
And make real positive change for their school community.
The programme has been designed in partnership with schools, pupils and See Me's young volunteers.
That's us.
And piloted with over 400 staff and pupils Scotland-wide.
It's completely free to take part and you can access all of the resources you need on the See Me website.
We want young people to understand, but it's okay not to be okay, and we can talk about it.
See Me, See Change offers a great starting point to open up that conversation and tackle the stigma that still exists.
Head to seemescotland.org to find out more.
Okay, so that was just a wee video there. Just thought it's important to see some of the young people that have been involved in designing and creating See Me, See Change, and it has been something that's been co-produced alongside young people, so See Me volunteers, and as mentioned in that video, kind of been piloted across different local authorities as well over the last few years. Got lots more information about that on our website, which I will kind of signpost to at the end of today's session as well. But first up, what we're going to do is just kind of get into the kind of main chunk of the content, which is understanding mental health stigma and discrimination and its impact. As I said at the start, this might be familiar to some of you, and it might not. I've been working with See Me for 2 years now, just over 2 years, and I continually am learning about stigma and discrimination and what that can look like as well. And we're very led by lived experience and the voices of lived experience within our programme. So I've ensured that we've got kind of some videos so you can actually hear it from people and what that actually looks like and has kind of felt like for them as well. So just to kind of go back to the very beginning when we're kind of talking about mental health, and I know this will definitely be familiar for lots of you, we like to use the mental health continuum as a good way to explain our mental health, something that we all have. We have it the same way that we have our physical health. And this continuum can be quite good to just show that actually your mental health isn't static. It moves. It can move through kind of different spaces depending on different circumstances, what you're experiencing at different times. The mental health continuum features quite heavily in the first session for pupils of See Me, See Change, and they'll be given kind of a couple of case studies of young people and kind of asked to sort of identify where in the different quadrants they might sit as well. So what we've got here is the kind of X and Y axis, which good mental well-being and poor mental well-being. And then we've got not diagnosed mental health problem and diagnosed mental health problem kind of sitting along those axes there. And what the mental health continuum does highlight, as I say, is that we can move around that depending on those different circumstances, but also that if you are living with a diagnosed mental health problem, you can also have good mental well-being if it's managed and you're supported as well. And also that you can have poor mental well-being and not have a diagnosed mental health problem too. So it's a useful tool in terms of understanding mental health, and one that we kind of come back to a lot throughout the sessions. And it's definitely kind of one of those sort of key messages that it's not static, it's not fixed. If you do have a diagnosed mental health problem, that can also change. You can also recover as well, and also you can have that good mental well-being if you are supported and kind of it's managed. So the mental health continuum just highlights kind of a few of these kind of key points: that we all have mental health just as we have physical health. Mental health does not equal mental illness. Sometimes we can find when people are talking about their mental health, they are maybe more implying kind of mental illness, mental health problems. It's again a reminder that it's something that we all have and it can vary, and it's on this continuum as well. that it's not fixed, that recovery is possible too. And even with a diagnosis, we can have positive mental well-being, and we all need to work to maintain good mental health in the same way that we look after our physical health. And talking about it is really key to normalising a lot of these kind of key messages, and in turn reducing the stigma. So these are some of the messages that are important when we're talking about our mental health to promote as well, kind of across schools and that wider community as well. So moving on from kind of understanding mental health, and what I would say here is that it was linked in the participant info, but for anyone that's looking for a little bit more in-depth training, there's the professional learning resource, which is free, and it's an e-learning. Some of you might have already kind of completed it. It's in several chapters. We help to kind of provide some of the information towards that. It's a fantastic resource as well for you to kind of build that knowledge, and more kind of looks across kind of supporting mental health as well. So lots more information in there too. So now what we'll do is we'll just kind of focus on stigma and discrimination, and I'm going to share the CME definitions here for to kind of start with, and these underpin all of the CME Sea Change sessions for staff and for pupils. So we describe stigma as the negative attitudes or beliefs based on a preconception, misunderstanding, or fear of mental health. And discrimination is when a person performs an action, whether intentional or unintentional, that creates barriers and inequality for people with lived experience of mental health problems. So we like to think of stigma as the thoughts, and discrimination as the actions is quite a good way to think about it. Also, we found too, when kind of, especially when doing the pupil sessions, it can actually be quite effective to lead with discrimination. We found that a lot of the young people we've done the training with can give quite kind of clear examples of what discrimination might be, kind of beyond mental health. So thinking about kind of sexism and racism, there's definite kind of tangible examples that they can lean on to help kind of build that understanding of what stigma and discrimination is. So starting sometimes with explaining discrimination can be a good idea, and then kind of also that the discrimination comes from these negative thoughts or misunderstandings and beliefs that are held about mental health, which is the stigma. So stigma as the thoughts and discrimination as the actions. I'm going to show you now another short wee video which is called When Stigma Comes Along, and this has actually been it's funded by our arts kind of programme and was created by a group of young people, and this specifically kind of talks about kind of the stigma from someone that experienced never heard those notifications before. And so this video is developed by people who have lived experience of mental illness, and they've developed this good little animation, which I think kind of really gives you a good understanding of what that stigma can look like. So bear with me while I come out of this and share from my main screen.
Living with a long-term mental illness is hard work. Then stigma comes along, and it's even harder to cope. Why don't people understand? Oh, you'll be all right. Why don't you take a bath? Try to be happier. What have you got to be so miserable about? It frays my nerves. It makes me feel annoyed and frustrated. Mental illness robs you of many things. It's a thief. Sense of self, identity, opportunities. But I'm not fragile. I'm deeply resilient. It has made me strong. It's exhausting managing my health, even on a good day. stigma on top of it all can be just too much. Professionals prejudge and put you in a box. Asking for help is difficult, and being dismissed is painful. It makes me feel small, like I'm not an individual. Stigma makes me feel lonely and less than whole. It needs to change. Challenge your thoughts on stigma. Take the time to listen. Thank you.
Claire, you're on mute.
Thanks, Kirsty. Okay, so that's just that little video there, as I say, that was supported by CME to develop that video, and there's a few others. I think we created 3 there in total, but I think it helps to kind of understand the impact that stigma can have for people living with mental health problem as well. So now what we're going to do is just kind of go into the different types of stigma, and then there's going to be a little poll shortly to kind of test you on those types of stigma as well. So this is definitely something that, kind of throughout my time working with CME, I've just been learning more and more about, are these different types of stigma, and also recent research. So we recently conducted the Scottish Mental Illness Stigma Study, has really helped for us to understand the kind of scale of these stigma experiences and these types of stigmas across kind of Scotland as well too. So first up, we're going to just focus on public stigma, and this is probably a stigma that most people will be aware of, and these are the kind of public stigma can be described as the negative attitudes or beliefs held by general public towards people with mental health problems. It can often be things that might be kind of just kind of said amongst kind of the public, but also can be within kind of the newspaper headlines, within what you see within the TV, although there's definitely is kind of progress being made within that in terms of kind of scripts, and sometimes we're asked to kind of have a look at scripts to ensure that they're not kind of stigmatizing groups of people living with mental health problems, but it is those kind of those attitudes that are kind of across society about people with mental health problems. The second one in the blue box in the middle there is self-stigma, and self-stigma happens when people who experience mental health problems internalise that public stigma. So all of those negative attitudes and beliefs start to become believed by the person living with a mental health problem, and this really can result in people limiting themselves and also kind of slow down the recovery. And the Scottish Mental Illness Stigma Study really kind of highlighted the scale of self-stigma as well, and lots of people with kind of a lot of feelings of shame, and say like absorbing and internalizing those public stigmas that they've been hearing or reading or kind of watching about people. Then you've got stigma by association, which I think is a really important one to highlight, because you don't need to have a mental health problem to experience stigma, is what stigma by association highlights. This can be experienced by people that are connected to someone who might have a mental health problem, so a family member or a friend as well too. So I think it's just kind of an important one to highlight as well, that you don't have to be experiencing a mental health problem to experience stigma. And then lastly, down there in the pink, we've got structural stigma. So that's when rules, policies and practices of organisations restrict the rights of opportunities for people with mental health problems. And this is the one that's kind of really hard sometimes to identify, and then as a result to tackle as well, because it's actually become kind of part and parcel of the way of working. It's in those foundations as well. And this also kind of very quickly can lead to discrimination too. So it's also worth highlighting that kind of as part of the CMEC change approach, we do have a section with pupils where we look at kind of policies, which for some is kind of quite a new topic, and some of them that are absolutely like fascinated by it as well too. And I think it's a good exercise for schools to be kind of looking at policies that are in place, and actually could they be stigmatizing for someone that's experiencing a mental health problem. And again, why lived experience is so important in terms of kind of reviewing and developing these sorts of things too, so that we are capturing those experiences as well. So that's the 4 different types of stigma. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a wee quiz to see what folk think. These on the next slide, we've got different types of stigma, what they are. So we've got public, self, stigma by association, and structural stigma to choose from. So yeah, if Jackie could get the poll ready, that would be great. Hopefully it should appear down the side.
Okay, that should be the first poll launched into the chat there.
The first one is, you're too young to be feeling like that. Okay, yep. So we've got most people picking public stigma there, and a couple that have maybe gone for structural stigma too. And the answer to this one is public stigma. Again, it can be an attitude that people could hold, particularly about a young person, that they wouldn't be able to experience a mental health problem because they're too young to be feeling like that. And it actually it's been a stigmatizing response that a lot of young people have highlighted to us kind of through our work. The next one. I don't want to be a burden. Not sure anyone would think I had a real problem anyway, so I'd better just keep quiet. Yeah, 100%. This the key word here is burden. Quite often we can find that people might have internalized those public stigmas and feel that they're burdened, so they'll kind of not want to share how they're feeling or ask for help. So it's a really clear example of self-stigma. Moving on to the third one. When dealing with schizophrenic people, you should always. Now, this one is usually a bit harder to guess, but thinking about it, as I've said, when dealing with schizophrenic people, you should always. Oh, wow. 92% have gone for structural stigma, got a couple of public stigma and stigma by association. The answer for this one is structural stigma. But I can also understand why some people might have picked other ones. I think it's the way that it can be read. This is actually an example of something that was taken from a health and social care policy. So it was written down in a document. So it's a clear example of structural stigma. When dealing with schizophrenic people, you should always. There's a lot of issues with this. Firstly, kind of schizophrenic people, we would never kind of group all people who are living with schizophrenia as a group of people as well. So there's the kind of language around there too. And it's also implying that there is a kind of a one kind of blanket approach when dealing with schizophrenic people, as it says. So yeah, that's an example of structural stigma and something that kind of had become woven into a policy and a way of working. And then lastly, they said I was unreliable because I had to care for my brother who's unwell at the minute. By the powers of elimination, I guess, as well. Yes, 100% there for the last one, which is an example of stigma by association. So again, kind of highlighting that it can be connected to a family member or a friend who might be experiencing a mental health problem as well. So thank you for taking the time to do that little quiz there. I hope that kind of unpicking some of the examples of stigma is helpful when we're thinking about it. And it's definitely something that when it comes into delivering the CMEC change sessions, and in particular when staff and pupils come together for the action planning, that thinking about these different types of stigma is really good in terms of the types of actions that we might be taking as well. So not just addressing the public stigma too, but thinking about what things can help to we tackle that self-stigma or the structural stigmas as well. Okay, so that is that. Let me just get on to the next slide. Doesn't want to move. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. So what we're going to do now is look a little bit more at understanding the impact that stigma and discrimination can have. So I'm going to share another video. There's quite a lot of videos before the break, and then there won't be any after that. So we'll get them all out in the first hour. This video is from some of our CME volunteers. It's from a few years ago now, and we're actually developing, well, soon to be, hopefully by the kind of summer, we've got a whole new suite of videos, education videos, which we filmed back in March as well. But I'm going to show you this video because I think it really kind of helps to understand the impact and also what can make a difference from the perspectives of young people as well.
I'm Jade, I'm 20.
My name's Emma, I'm 19.
I'm Francesca, I'm 23.
I'm Claire, I'm 21.
My name's Caitlin, I'm 18 years old.
My name's Jason, I'm 21.
I'm Lynn, I'm 24.
Yeah, I had a lot of negative experiences. I'd been living with depression for almost a year by the point that I actually found someone to speak to about it.
I spoke to my guidance teacher and basically she just said, oh well, I can't deal with it. They just didn't listen, they weren't interested. They tried to kind of give me leaflets and kind of just say that that's it, that's enough, and they didn't give me any explanation at all about what they were talking about. It was all jargon and everything.
Going through the whole way through school and not having anybody to speak to, I feel like a lot of the guidance teachers like, oh, you'll be okay, you're just hormonal, you're just technically a teenager.
Like one conversation that I had where a lecturer said, oh, you just need to take the summer and come back ready to work.
It felt like everything I was feeling and everything I was going through, she was just blaming it on one thing instead of looking at the wider picture, and I really felt shut down.
Sometimes if I'd arranged a time to go speak to them and then they maybe like weren't there, they were busy and they didn't give me like an exact time to go back, they were just like, oh, I can speak another day, and then that kept on just kind of continuing, and then in the end I just ended up giving up because I just felt like they weren't like interested and they didn't care.
Speaking to that CPN put me off wanting to see another CPN, and I haven't seen another CPN since.
I tried to speak to people about how I felt, and everyone else had dismissed what I was saying. So they had said, "You're too young to be feeling like this, and you'll be fine. Just get your act together, buck up your ideas."
Which is really unhelpful because it undermines the whole experience of how long like a mental ill health condition can take to recover from.
No, I don't think it's right that they kind of just pass you off as just being a teenager. Like you have mental health at all ages, and which means you can have problems at any age.
They've came to speak to you and trusted you, and it's the fact of you've got to realise how nice it is to be trusted. Just that clarity is so important to people when they're in that vulnerable situation. Maybe their mind won't be kind of working in that way, so you need to really spell out to some people. I got reassured. I was told this is happening, this is how you can deal with it, and you don't need to be so scared or terrified. Everything's going to be okay and you'll be smiling again.
Like they made it clear that I could go speak to them whenever, so one of them was like a teacher, and they just kind of like every time they saw me they'd kind of like check up and just say, "Oh, how are you doing?"
Yeah, so it felt as if like I could approach her on a personal level about those things, so it felt natural that she would be the person I would speak to about any other issues as well.
The most important thing is listening to the person that you're talking to, taking the time to just sit and just listen to what they're saying, because most of the time that's all they're asking you to do is just listen to them. It was my English teacher in 6th year. She approached me after a crisis point, and she just was really good. She just kind of spoke to me as if I was anything else and didn't really kind of make me feel as if I was different.
She took the time to recognise what was going on, and she took the time to understand there was so much more behind like me than what others were saying.
How would you want to be like treated if you were in that situation? What would you do if it was you on the other side of it?
When I made the appointment, it was kind of a one last shot for me at actually speaking to someone about how I was feeling, and she was just brilliant. She was like the first person that I felt actually listened to what I was saying and understood where I was coming from. She was the first person to say that it wasn't my fault and that this was an illness and that's why I was feeling the way I was, and that she promised that she would help me, and she did.
Claire, you're on mute again.
Thanks, Kirsty. You're on it. Thanks. I was going to say thanks for watching that. But that video there, as I say, is just kind of brings some of those kind of real experiences to life. And I really like it, especially kind of at the end when you're kind of learning about who that person was. And it really highlights that it can be anyone kind of with that young person as well too. So that's again the importance of the See Me See Change kind of whole school approach is about kind of ensuring that there are more people within that school who are there and able to kind of have those conversations. It may not be that that person can provide that specific support or kind of know exactly what to do, but it's actually a lot of it's about kind of listening and holding that space as well, and kind of going from there, depending on that young person too. And I know that everyone here who's here today will be one of those people as well, because you're here and learning and kind of taking the time to know more about the CMEC change approach for your schools as well. So we know that stigma from those videos that we have watched, the kind of first animation and that one there, can reduce help-seeking behaviour, can also make mental health problems worse as well. We have a statistic that it's focused on health and social care settings, but if someone experiences a stigmatising response in a kind of GP's practice, it can take up to a year to ask for help again as well, which really kind of highlights kind of the magnitude of it. It can just mean that someone does not ask for help as well. It'll further isolate individuals who may already be struggling and experience those, increase those experiences of self-stigma, like we've talked about, and face and experience discrimination as well. So that really highlights why it's important that we are tackling mental health stigma. And what we've done so far is we've kind of understood that from the experience of the young person, but I also now want to take the time to share an experience from a workplace perspective, because CMEC Change also looks at the school as a workplace, and that's something that happens within the school sessions as well, where you're able to kind of think about it as amongst colleagues as well. So I'm going to share one last video from Chick, who is a CME volunteer. He's not a teacher, he has actually done some community education stuff. We're always looking to get more teacher experiences out there. That's my shout out too. So if you like being on camera, let me know. It's quite hard to find. But I'll share this final video, and that will just also get you to think about it from a workplace perspective, which is also really part of the whole approach, because yeah, a whole school is also a workplace as well too. So. Video yet.
My name is Chick Duncan, and I'm a media volunteer with CME. I have a severely debilitating mental health condition, which according to the World Health Organization is up there in the top 10. My condition is obsessive compulsive disorder. And in my case, it does involve a lot of washing and cleaning and avoiding touching things. Other people can have other sorts of ideas, intrusive thoughts, this sort of thing. It can impact very suddenly, so that I might drop something on the floor and then not be able to pick it up because it's not clean. And that can be very awkward in an employment situation. Somebody else might drop something on the floor and then want me to sign it, for example. Those kind of situations in a formal employment situation can be very difficult. I visited Burness Paul, a legal organisation here in Glasgow, and they were looking for somebody to come in and talk about lived experience. So I went in there, spent, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, just talking about my own life, the background and so on, how my mental health has affected what I've done and what I've not been able to do. But the other side of that coin is that I have worked part-time as an IT tutor at Glasgow University, an IT tutor in community education. I've been a web designer. Employers in particular who have to make those decisions about who you're going to employ and how you're going to employ them, try and find out a wee bit about what the condition is, what it involves, and what it doesn't involve. They'll get rid of the myths about it. Other staff, I suppose you're just hoping for people to be compassionate, and considerate if you're struggling a wee bit, to support you or even just leave you alone if that's what's necessary, If you don't see past the stigma, you never know what you're missing. You could be missing a potential employee of the year. You could be missing somebody who could save your company thousands or even more. See past the stigma. You don't know, A, in terms of the potential of the person, B, in the productivity potential, and also in terms of the financial potential that this person might bring to your company.
I'm on mute. Got it. Getting into the swing of this, well, we won't have so many jumping between videos and things in the next half, so it'll be a little bit smoother. But yeah, so that's a couple of videos there, and we've got a video library on YouTube with loads more there for anyone that is kind of wanting to learn. It's again, yeah, just a really great way to kind of understand what it's like to live with a mental health problem, and people kind of sharing those experiences there. Obviously, Chicks is kind of focused on that kind of company, but I think a lot of the on a company kind of workplace in that video, but I think a lot of it still also applies within a school setting there as well, some of those kind of key messages too. So now we're going to go into breakout groups, and we're going to take 10 minutes in your group to kind of reflect on what you've learned so far. So that's just all you're going to be asked to do. Just take a time to reflect. I've gone through lots of information there as well, so you'll just be able to have a bit of a chat, and you can touch on some of the things that you've been. There'll be CME staff in those breakout groups and also some Northern Alliance team members as well too. So, but yeah, just free to have a conversation as well, and then we'll come back as a whole group.